What's just wrong with it? Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, you guys. My name is Erica. I'm the Director of Alumni here at Evolutions Treatment Center, and I am also the Director of our Sober Living Housing. So my experience as being the Director of Sober Living Housing is basically, so pretty much let's backtrack. When I went through treatment, after completing treatment, I was in halfway 3/4 in sober living for quite some time, over 2 years actually. And I think that that played a huge part in my strong foundation to achieve long-term sobriety, because the real work happens and occurs after you complete treatment, in my opinion. Treatment is more about like learning the coping skills, diving in through therapy, getting the medication correctly. But like recovery in the sense of getting a sponsor and working the steps and having a job and being like a normal human of society really occurs in like a halfway house and after treatment is completed, right? So as the director, I am able to use my own experience of living in a sober living house myself to kind of encourage the clients and to help them. So basically what you're responsible for when you're in sober living is that you still go to meetings. For our facility, you're required to go to at least 3 meetings, have a meeting sheet. You need to have a sponsor, be actively working a program. There is a curfew. There is a little leniency there, but it's because you have completed treatment, therefore that you have the tools, and then it's time to put it into practice, to put it into work. So it's encouraged that they already have a sponsor by the time that they're in IOP, but once they actually get to sober living, then they need to have a sponsor and to be working some steps and going to meetings. Some people might struggle with that aspect of recovery, but it is important, so it's always encouraged. Especially now with the pandemic, I have seen, even for myself and people even outside of the sober living, just in recovery in general, that they're having an issue with getting a sponsor, whether that being because the face-to-face or whatever the case might be. But there are more than enough resources in the sense of like Zoom meetings and recovery out there for you to kind of dive into it. I have seen a lot of times, especially when somebody first comes into a sober living, they struggle with the balance, which I completely understand because I'm in school full-time, I work full-time, I'm in recovery myself, everybody has, they work, you know, all of those sort of things. And to find the balance in between making sure that you're working on your recovery and balancing everything else in your life, it can kind of be, it's a struggle at first, and some people struggle more than others, but that's kind of why you have the accountability to say, okay, I need to continue working on this. So for somebody who is completing treatment and they're trying to figure out what their next step is, and they want to decide whether to go to a halfway house, a 3/4 house sober living, or to go and on their own, why is it that they would pick to go to a sober living house? Because they have that extra accountability. I know that for myself, I needed people there to say, are you going to meetings, Erica? Are you calling your sponsor? Are you coming home on time? Are you staying out all night? Because for me, I was a crystal meth user. You stay up all night. So there's nothing, my parents always said there's nothing good that happens past midnight. So our curfew is midnight. The only reason you would not be there for curfew is because you're at work. But I needed to have that little accountability, you know, because there's that saying in the rooms that like, don't allow for the life that recovery has given you to take away the life that recovery has given you, which basically means that in recovery, we get abundant blessings. And sometimes our plate is so full that we forget where we came from, and we can kind of put recovery on the back burner if we're not careful, right? So we have a weekly community meeting, and that's kind of when they turn in their meeting sheets. They get the new meeting sheets. We talk about anything going on the property that needs to be addressed, making sure that they're staying on top of their recovery and their program.
Okay.
So for the question about how long somebody should stay in sober living, there's not like one concrete answer. For each person in their individual case, it's going to be different. I know that when I was in halfway in sober living, this guy always said, if you have to question if you're ready, then you're not ready. For me, I knew it was time because God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. I had stayed there until it was time for me, you know, and that's a lot about what recovery is about. It's like allowing for your higher power to take control of your life, because left to my own devices, I get high every single time. So whenever that door of opportunity opened, right, and I'm praying and I'm following our program and I'm trusting in my higher power, like things will just line up and occur. And that's kind of how you know. There's not one concrete answer saying, oh, you need to stay for a year. Oh, you need to stay for 2 months. Oh, you need to stay. No, it's not like that, right? Because for the person who's watching this, you might need to stay longer or stay shorter amount of time than what I stayed, you know? And that's okay, right? Because everybody's journey is different, right? We all follow the principles, we all follow the recovery program, but between me and the next person, our exact time amounts are going to be different because that's just the way that it is, you know? So if somebody is interested, they're completing treatment and they're interested in coming to the Sober Living, they can contact me directly at 305-450-8427. And we can just kind of talk about where they're at in the recovery, what they're looking for, have an understanding of what they're kind of signing up for, and go from there, you know. And even if somebody's on the fence and they're not necessarily sure, then we can talk about those things, you know. I know for myself, when I was using and I come into treatment and people say, oh, my thought process and my actions caused me to get high, right? So one thing personally that I struggled with was making a decision because I'm afraid of making the wrong decision, right? So that's kind of why we have people in recovery that we lean on, our sober support, people to kind of guide us to ask those questions. So I'm always available if anybody has any questions, and I'd be more than happy to help.